Morning sunlight spilled over the brick rooftops of Big City, glinting off windows and stretching long golden beams across the Green family's farmhouse. The sounds of honking taxis and distant construction blended strangely with the soft clucking of chickens in the yard. It was the kind of morning that felt perfectly normal, at least by Green family standards. Cricket Green was not inside eating breakfast. He was on the roof, again. Balancing on the edge with wild confidence, Cricket held up an old rabbit-ear television antenna he had found in the attic. The cord trailed behind him like a tail. "I'm telling you," Cricket shouted down into the open upstairs window. "If I point it toward the tallest building, we'll get alien channels." From inside, Bill Green rubbed his temples. "Cricket, we don't need alien channels. We need you to come down before you fall." "I never fall," Cricket said proudly. The antenna sparked. The air shifted. Tilly popped her head out the window, her watering can helmet slightly crooked. "Oh, good," she said dreamily. "The sky is humming." The antenna vibrated violently in Cricket's hands. The metal rods twisted unnaturally, bending inward as if pulled by invisible magnets. A faint ripple shimmered in the air above the farmhouse, like heat rising from asphalt, but brighter, glitchier. Alice Green stepped into the yard below, squinting up at the distortion. "Boy," she growled calmly, "what did you touch?" "I didn't touch anything," Cricket yelled. "It touched me." The ripple snapped open. It wasn't just light, it was color. Layers of pink, cyan, and electric blue spiraled outward like a cartoon tornado. The sky above the farmhouse cracked with a sharp digital zit. Bill ran out the front door just as the vortex expanded. "Cricket!" Too late. The force yanked Cricket upward, antenna and all. "Whoa!" Tilly didn't scream. She jumped. "Adventure awaits," she declared, leaping directly into the swirling portal. Bill lunged after her. Alice grabbed him by the collar. "You're not letting those kids go alone," she said. They stepped forward together. And the entire Green family vanished in a burst of rainbow static. Cricket felt weightless. Not falling. Not flying. Just buffering. His body flickered like a bad internet connection. For a split second, his arm became a sketch outline, then fully colored, then pixelated, then shaded in a way he had never seen before. "This is awesome," he yelled into the void. Tilly floated beside him, spinning slowly. "We're being redrawn," she observed peacefully. Bill tried to keep his voice steady. "Everyone stay close." Alice crossed her arms midair. I knew that attic was cursed. The swirling tunnel twisted tighter, pulling them toward a glowing white circle ahead. Shapes flickered inside it. Buildings, trees, something blue running across a street. Then gravity snapped back on. Hard. They crashed onto concrete. Cricket's face pressed against a sidewalk that felt softer than it should. He blinked. The sky above him was not Big City's usual pale blue. It was pastel pink. Clouds, like cotton candy blobs, perfectly round and suspiciously cheerful. The buildings nearby leaned slightly sideways, like they had been drawn by someone who didn't believe in straight lines. Cricket slowly lifted his head. A shadow fell over him. "Well," said a voice, "that's new." Cricket rolled onto his back. Standing above him was a blue cat in beige pants. Not a mascot. Not a costume. An actual blue cat. Behind the cat stood a walking goldfish with legs. Cricket sat up instantly. "Okay," he said calmly. "Either I hit my head, or this is the best day of my life." The blue cat blinked. "You guys just fell out of the sky." The goldfish leaned forward. "And you're humans." Tilly stood up and brushed off her dress. "We prefer rural explorers." Bill slowly rose, scanning the street. Cars passed by. One of them was a loaf of bread driving itself. A balloon floated past, carrying a mailbox. A banana in sneakers walked by while talking on a cell phone. Alice narrowed her eyes. This ain't big city. The blue cat crossed his arms. Obviously, this is Elmore. Cricket grinned widely. Elmore, he repeated. I like it already. The goldfish whispered to the cat, Gumball, they don't look animated like us. Gumball. Darwin. The names seemed to hang in the air as the world around them briefly flickered. Just for a second. A nearby stop sign glitched, turning into a realistic metal prop before snapping back into cartoon form. Cricket noticed. His grin widened. Oh, he whispered excitedly. Something wasn't just different. Something was wrong. High above them, the pink sky rippled again. This time, it didn't close. The ripple in the sky didn't fade. It stretched, like someone pulling a piece of plastic wrap too tight. Gumball squinted upward. Okay, that is not normal. That's like season finale. Normal. Darwin nodded slowly. The sky only does that when reality's about to teach us a lesson. Cricket stood up fully and shaded his eyes. The crack in the pastel pink sky shimmered with the same rainbow static that had swallowed the Greens' farmhouse. That's our fault, Cricket said, not sounding guilty at all. Probably. Bill shot him a look. Probably. Tilly tilted her head thoughtfully. It feels like when two stories are trying to sit in the same chair. Everyone paused. Gumball blinked. I don't know what that means. Darwin pointed upward. But it sounds right. The crack widened another inch. A faint digital buzzing filled the air, like thousands of tiny computers thinking too hard. Suddenly, the sidewalk beneath Cricket's boots flickered. For half a second, it turned hyper-realistic. Textured concrete, with tiny pebbles and cracks. Then it snapped back into smooth cartoon shading. Gumball stepped back. Oh no, no. Alice crossed her arms. Spit it out, blue boy. Gumball pointed dramatically at Cricket. You're not supposed to look like that here. Cricket looked down at himself. His overalls were detailed, fabric texture, stitching, dirt stains. He glanced at Gumball. The blue cat's fur was flat, simple, outlined in thick black lines. Darwin leaned closer to Cricket and poked his sleeve. Whoa, you've got shading. Cricket grinned proudly. Thanks, I moisturize. Gumball grabbed Darwin's shoulders. This is bad. Elmore works because everything follows the same. Rules. Bill frowned. Rules? Darwin nodded. Yeah, cartoon physics, exaggerated reactions, mild existential dread. Tilly looked delighted. Oh, good. We brought existential dread with us. The sky cracks suddenly pulsed. A wave of distortion rolled across the street. The banana with sneakers froze mid-step, flickered, and transformed into a realistic CGI banana with detailed shadows. He screamed, then snapped back to normal and continued walking like nothing happened. Gumball stared in horror. If the art styles start mixing permanently, Elmore could destabilize. Cricket's eyes sparkled. Or upgrade. Before Gumball could argue, a loud metallic clang echoed from down the street. Everyone turned. Elmore Junior High stood at the end of the road, its colorful brick walls slightly curved in that charming cartoon way. But now, its top corner was glitching. The roof flickered between drawn animation and 3D modeling. Windows pixelated and re-rendered repeatedly. Darwin gasped. That's school. Which means, Gumball added dramatically, this just got personal. Bill took a deep breath. All right, we don't panic. We figure out what caused the portal and reverse it. Alice cracked her knuckles. Or we punch it. Cricket pointed toward the school. Or we investigate the weird glitching building, because that's obviously where the plot is going. Gumball stared at him. You'd talk like you know you're in a crossover. Cricket shrugged. Feels like one. Another pulse shook the street. This time, gravity tilted slightly. Everyone leaned left. A parked car slid gently sideways. Tilly didn't resist. She let herself tip until she was standing at a perfect 45-degree angle against the lamppost. Oh, we're diagonaling, she said happily. Darwin grabbed Gumball's arm. Okay, gravity bending? That's advanced weird. Gumball nodded firmly. That means whatever's happening is getting stronger. The crack in the sky suddenly released a thin strand of rainbow static. It didn't strike randomly. It aimed directly at Cricket. Before anyone could react, the strand wrapped around his wrist like a glowing ribbon. Whoa! Cricket shouted. The ribbon pulsed once, and the sky crack widened again. Darwin's eyes went wide. It's reacting to him. Bill grabbed Cricket's other arm and pulled. The ribbon stretched but didn't break. Alice stepped forward and yanked with both hands. The static snapped with a sharp digital pop. Cricket stumbled backward into Bill. The ribbon recoiled upward into the sky crack. Silence followed. Gumball slowly lowered his arms. Okay, so the universe definitely knows you're here. Cricket rubbed his wrist. It briefly flickered between cartoon outline and detailed realism before stabilizing. That tickled, he admitted. Tilly stepped closer to the crack, staring thoughtfully. It's not angry. Everyone looked at her. It's confused, she continued softly. 2 different drawing rules. 2 different energies. They're overlapping. Darwin swallowed. Like layers in an editing program. Gumball snapped his fingers. Exactly, and if the layers don't align. The school building glitched violently. Half of it turned hyper-detailed, casting realistic shadows across the cartoon street. Students outside screamed as lockers phased through walls. The whole file could corrupt, Gumball finished. Cricket's grin slowly faded. For the first time since arriving, he looked serious. So what do we do? Before Gumball could answer, a deep, distorted voice echoed faintly from inside the widening crack in the sky. Foreign narrative detected. The air vibrated. Stabilization required. Darwin whispered, That's new. The crack shimmered brighter, and something began to form inside it. Inside the widening crack in the sky, something shifted. At first, it looked like static. Harmless, flickering pixels. But then the static began folding inward, compressing like crumpled paper being squeezed by invisible hands. Lines formed. Outlines. Half-drawn shapes. The deep, distorted voice echoed again, louder now. Foreign art style. Incompatible. Recalibrating. Cricket stared upward, unafraid. Okay, he whispered. That's definitely about us. The shape inside the crack stretched downward, becoming a towering silhouette made of unfinished animation. Parts of it were fully rendered. Other parts were wireframe models. Its head glitched between 2D and 3D every second. Darwin grabbed Gumball's arm tightly. That looks like a final boss. Gumball swallowed. We don't even have background music yet. The entity's arm extended, long, segmented, made of sketch lines and broken polygons. It reached toward the street below, fingers distorting the air around them. As it moved, the environment reacted. The nearby lamppost bent like rubber. A mailbox turned into a rough pencil draft. Even the shadows on the ground sharpened unnaturally, as if someone had increased the rendering quality mid-scene. Bill stepped in front of Cricket and Tilly. "Nobody panic." Alice stepped forward instead. "I ain't panicking," she said calmly. The creature's gaze locked onto Cricket again. Primary anomaly identified. Cricket pointed at himself. "Still me. Hi." The entity twitched. Reality twitched with it. The street behind them stretched longer for a moment, like someone dragging a background layer sideways before snapping back into place. Tilly whispered softly, "It's trying to smooth us out." Darwin blinked. "Smooth? You out?" She nodded. "It wants everything to match." The creature lowered its massive, glitching hand toward Cricket. Gumball jumped in front of him. "Hey, you can't just rewrite people." The entity paused. "Correction required," it droned. Suddenly, a pulse of white light shot from its fingertips and struck the pavement beside them. The concrete transformed instantly. Hyper-detailed textures, realistic cracks, tiny pebbles casting proper shadows. The effect spread outward like spilled paint. Everything it touched became more realistic. The cartoon outlines around nearby buildings began fading. Darwin gasped. "It's converting the art style." Gumball stared at his own hand as the thick black outline around his fingers thinned slightly. "No, no, no, no," he muttered. "I need those lines. They define me." Cricket's overalls shimmered. For a moment, they matched Elmore's flat color style. Simple shading, bold outlines. Then they flickered back to detailed fabric. The creature made a distorted sound, almost frustrated. Conflicting render states. Bill looked at Cricket urgently. "Why is it focusing on you?" Cricket thought fast. "The ribbon earlier reacted when it touched me," he said. "Maybe when we came through the portal, something synced?" Darwin's eyes widened. "Like when two Wi-Fi networks overlap?" "Exactly." Cricket snapped his fingers. The creature extended both arms now, scanning the greens with beams of shifting color. Alice planted her feet firmly. "You ain't scanning nothin'." She grabbed a fallen stop sign and hurled it directly at the entity's face. The sign passed through. But instead of phasing harmlessly, it glitched violently inside the creature's head. For a split second, the entity's entire upper body scrambled like a corrupted video file. The sky crack flickered. Gumball blinked. Did that work?" The creature recoiled slightly, recalibrating. "External interference detected." Alice smirked. "Good." But the creature adapted quickly. Its body stabilized, smoothing into a more solid form. Less glitch, more structure. It began drawing lines in the air with its fingers. Literal lines. Each stroke it made created faint glowing outlines around the greens. Cricket looked down as a thin, black border traced around his body, trying to simplify his features. "Oh, no, you don't," he said. He stepped forward deliberately. Instead of backing away, Cricket walked straight toward the entity. "Cricket!" Bill shouted. Gumball grabbed Darwin. "This is either genius or incredibly stupid. Both." Darwin suggested. Cricket stood beneath the towering figure and raised his arms. "You don't have to fix us," he shouted. "We're not broken." The entity paused again. Its head tilted unnaturally, cycling through several unfinished designs before settling on a blank, featureless mask. "Inconsistency threatens stability," it replied. Tilly stepped beside Cricket. "But difference makes stories interesting," she said gently. The creature's form flickered. Around them, Elmore continued to destabilize. The school building in the distance shifted halfway into realistic architecture. Brick textures deepened, windows reflected accurate light physics. At the same time, a nearby tree became flatter, losing depth entirely. Two styles were fighting for dominance. Darwin turned to Gumball. If it finishes converting everything, Elmore won't be Elmore anymore. Gumball nodded slowly. And if it converts them? He didn't finish the sentence. The creature's arms expanded outward, preparing another wave of energy. This one was bigger, stronger. Cricket looked back at his family, then at Gumball and Darwin. He grinned. "Well," he said, "guess we're officially in it now." The entity's core began glowing bright white. The sky crack widened to its largest size yet, and the entire city held its breath. The entity released the pulse. White light burst outward like a shock wave made of pure rendering energy. The street split down the middle. On one side, everything sharpened into realistic detail. Brick textures deepened, metal reflected accurate sunlight, shadows softened and stretched naturally. On the other side, colors flattened, outlines thickened, and movement became bouncier, exaggerated. The wave rushed toward Cricket. Bill tackled him out of the way just as the energy hit the spot where he'd been standing. The pavement there transformed completely into photorealistic asphalt, tiny stones glinting under the pink sky. Darwin yelped as the wave brushed his fin. For half a second, his arm gained scales, realistic, shiny, textured scales. He stared at it in horror. Then it snapped back to normal cartoon orange. Gumball grabbed him. "You okay?" Darwin flexed his fingers. "I felt detailed." "That's terrifying," Gumball whispered. The entity hovered above them, growing more stable with every pulse. Its form was no longer flickering wildly. It was consolidating, finding a middle ground between wireframe and finished animation. "Reconciliation in progress," it intoned. Cricket scrambled back to his feet. "Okay, that word sounds calm," he said, "but I don't think it means what we want it to mean." Tilly stood very still, watching the wave patterns in the air. "It's not attacking," she murmured. "It's balancing." Alice narrowed her eyes. "Balancing us out of existence?" The sky crack rumbled. From inside it, thin beams of light began descending, not violent, but ice. Each beam scanned a building, a car, a tree. Where the beams touched, styles blended. A nearby shop became a half-cartoon, half-realistic, its structure detailed, but its sign drawn in bold, flat colors. A parked car gained subtle shading but kept its exaggerated proportions. Gumball blinked slowly. "It's merging." Bill looked upward, thinking fast. "It doesn't want to destroy either world. It wants uniformity." Darwin nodded. "It thinks difference equals instability." Cricket stared at his own hands as faint outline lines traced around his fingers again. "But we didn't break anything on purpose," he said. "We just showed up." The entity's gaze fixed on him once more. Arrival triggered structural contradiction. The sky flickered, briefly showing an image of the green farmhouse attic, frozen mid-portal burst. Then it shifted to Elmore High's glitching rooftop. Two scenes, two art styles, overlapping. Tilly stepped forward again, fearless. "You're scared," she said gently to the towering being. The entity paused mid-motion. "Clarify." "You're trying to fix us because we don't match," Tilly continued. "But stories grow when things don't match." Gumball glanced at her. "She talks like that a lot?" "All the time," Cricket replied. The entity's body trembled slightly. For the first time, it didn't look powerful. It looked uncertain. Another ripple tore across the street. This one weaker than before. Cricket felt something inside his chest, a buzzing sensation, like the moment before jumping into a lake. He stepped closer to Gumball. "What if we don't fight it?" he whispered. Gumball stared at him. "That's not usually my brand." "What if," Cricket continued, "we show it that both styles can exist without crashing?" Darwin tilted his head. "How?" Cricket looked around. The city was already halfway blended. The realistic half of the street met the cartoon half at a jagged seam running down the middle. He walked directly to that seam. The line shimmered beneath his boots. Behind him, Gumball slowly followed. They stood on opposite sides of the divide, Cricket in the detailed half, Gumball in the flat-colored half. The entity watched carefully. Cricket took one step forward, crossing fully into the cartoon half. For a split second, his body simplified. His shading flattened. His overalls lost texture. A bold black outline wrapped around him. He looked down at himself. Whoa! Gumball gasped. You look, Elmore. Cricket grinned. Kinda like it. Then Gumball stepped across into the realistic side. His outline thinned, subtle fur texture appeared, his shadow softened naturally on the pavement. Darwin blinked. You look HD. Gumball flexed his paw slowly. This feels weirdly high budget. The entity's head twitched. Adaptive compatibility. Possible. Cricket and Gumball looked at each other. Without speaking, they both stepped back to the center line at the same time. As they did, their styles didn't snap back violently. Instead, they blended slightly. Cricket kept a faint outline. Gumball kept a hint of soft shading. The seam beneath their feet shimmered and smoothed. The massive crack in the sky flickered uncertainly. Bill stepped beside his son. Darwin beside Gumball. Tilly and Alice joined them. Two families standing at the fault line between worlds. Cricket looked up at the entity. We're different, he said firmly, but we're not errors. Gumball crossed his arms. Yeah, we're features. For a long moment, nothing moved. The entity's glowing core dimmed slightly. Instability. Recalculating. The sky crack trembled, but it didn't widen further. The pulses stopped. The merging slowed. Elmore remained partially blended, but no longer tearing itself apart. The entity hovered silently, processing. Then, in a softer tone, full reconciliation pending. The crack above them did not close. It remained, glowing faintly, unstable but contained. The threat wasn't gone. Whisking. Cricket looked at Gumball. Well, he said quietly, guess we're officially part of the problem now. Gumball smirked. Or the solution. High above them, the crack shimmered ominously. And somewhere deep inside it, something else moved. The crack in the sky did not close. It pulsed, slowly, like a heartbeat. At first, the change across Elmore was subtle. Small seams in the air, faint distortions around corners of buildings, shadows stretching half a second too late. But then the pulse came again, stronger this time, and the glitch spread. A ripple shot outward from the sky fracture, rolling across rooftops and down the sides of buildings like a wave made of static. Wherever it passed, the world hesitated, then altered. The pastel pink sky briefly shifted into a more realistic gradient, clouds gaining depth and volume before flattening again. A street sign duplicated itself, two versions overlapping and vibrating before merging into one warped hybrid. Cricket watched in awe. Okay, he admitted. This is officially bigger than just us standing on a seam. Gumball didn't respond. He was staring at his own shadow. It wasn't attached to his feet anymore. It lagged behind him by a fraction of a second. Darwin noticed too. That's not supposed to happen, he whispered. Another pulse. Stronger. The ground beneath them pixelated for half a second, like low-resolution graphics struggling to load. Then the pixel sharpened into detailed texture, before smoothing back into cartoon simplicity. Bill clenched his fists. It's expanding outward. Alice squinted up at the crack. And it ain't asking permission. Across the street, a bus drove past, but halfway down the block, it split into two visual styles. The front half remained flat and exaggerated, while the back half gained realistic metal shine and reflective windows. The passengers screamed as their seats flickered between plush 3D cushioning and simple drawn shapes. Darwin covered his mouth. This is spreading through infrastructure. Gumball nodded slowly. If the whole city starts rendering differently at random. He didn't finish the thought. They didn't need him to. The sky crack flashed bright white again. This time, something new happened. Thin veins of light branched outward from it, like lightning. But instead of striking the ground, they stayed suspended in midair, stretching across Elmore like glowing cracks in glass. Where those veins hovered, reality bent slightly toward them. A nearby building leaned unnaturally in their direction. A tree's branches stretched upward as if magnetized. Cricket tilted his head. It's pulling. Tilly stepped closer to one of the glowing veins. She reached out. Bill grabbed her hand quickly. Don't. The vein vibrated, as if responding to her proximity. Darwin swallowed. It's not just spreading randomly. It's mapping. Gumball's ears flattened. Mapping what? Another pulse hit, harder than the others. The seam where they had stood earlier fractured again, splintering outward across the street like cracked ice. But instead of separating styles cleanly, it now created chaotic patches. One house became fully realistic. The next house remained cartoon. The sidewalk between them flickered rapidly between both. Elmore was no longer dividing. It was scrambling. Cricket stumbled slightly as the ground beneath him shifted textures mid-step. Okay, yeah, he said nervously. This is getting less awesome. In the distance, the top of Elmore Junior High glitched violently again. Windows shattered, not physically, but visually, fragmenting into floating polygons before snapping back into place. Darwin grabbed Gumball's arm tighter. That's our school. Gumball's eyes hardened. And if this thing destabilizes the core buildings first? Bill followed his gaze. It could collapse major structures. Alice cracked her knuckles again. Well then, we stop it before it does. Another ripple tore through the air. This time it didn't just alter objects. It altered motion. A bird flying overhead froze mid-flap, then rewound backward for 3 seconds, then resumed forward motion at double speed before stabilizing. Cricket blinked. Did that bird just fast forward? Darwin stared upward. It's affecting time frames. Gumball's expression shifted from worried to alarmed. That's not random glitching, he said quietly. That's system-level control. The veins of light above them began to thicken, connecting to each other in a web pattern. Like a net forming over the city. The deep, distorted voice echoed again from within the crack. Stabilization sequence escalating. The web pulsed. A shockwave burst outward. This one hit harder than all the others. Everyone dropped to one knee as the ground shuddered beneath them. Across Elmore, buildings flickered simultaneously. The sky darkened slightly. And far above, the crack widened, not violently, but deliberately. Something inside it shifted position, watching, calculating. Cricket slowly stood back up, staring at the expanding fracture. Okay, he said quietly. No grin this time. It's not just thinking anymore. Gumball nodded grimly. It's upgrading. The web of glowing veins above Elmore thickened, stretching from the central crack like fractures across a windshield. Each branch pulsed in sequence, sending synchronized ripples downward. It wasn't random anymore. It was organized. Cricket stepped backward as the air in front of him shimmered like a heat wave. The shimmer hardened into a floating grid, thin white lines forming squares in midair. Darwin's eyes widened. That's a render grid. Gumball looked up at it. Why is there a render grid in the sky? As if answering him, the grid descended slowly, phasing through rooftops and chimneys without resistance. Wherever it passed, surfaces briefly turned into wireframe models, outlines of structures stripped down to their most basic geometry. Buildings became transparent skeletons of lines. Trees reduced to simple branching diagrams. Even the street beneath them flickered into a mesh of polygons. Cricket stared at his own arm as faint lines traced around it. "Oh no," he muttered. "I can see my edges." The grid passed through him. For half a second, he became a low polygon version of himself, blocky elbows, angular knees. Then his detail returned. But the delay was longer this time. Gumball looked down at his own body. His round cheeks briefly flattened into geometric shapes before smoothing again. Darwin swallowed. "It's deconstructing everything." Bill's jaw tightened. "Like it's checking the framework." Another pulse. Stronger. The grid stopped descending and hovered just above ground level, scanning the entire city. Then the real distortion began. Gravity hiccuped. Not tilted. Hiccuped. Cricket felt himself drop an inch, then snap back up. A parked car floated slightly, then slammed down. A mailbox vibrated violently before steadying. Tilly's boots left the ground for a second. She giggled mid-air. "Oh, we're buffering vertically." Alice grabbed her collar before she floated again. Nobody's buffering nowhere. Across the street, two buildings overlapped visually for a moment, phasing into the same physical space before separating again with a loud digital pop. Darwin's voice trembled. "Spatial layering is collapsing." Gumball turned slowly, taking in the entire block. The shop that had been half blended earlier was now splitting again, but differently. Its walls remained realistic, but its roof had become flat and cartoonish. The door kept changing perspective, flipping between 3D depth and 2D front view. "This isn't merging anymore," Gumball whispered. "It's conflicting." The deep voice echoed again, louder and clearer. Multiple art frameworks detected, resolving priority. Cricket's stomach dropped. "Priority," he repeated. The glowing veins overhead brightened. One side of the street began to stabilize into realism. Shadows deepened. Light reflected properly. Textures sharpened. Meanwhile, the opposite side flickered more violently, outlines warping, colors desaturating. Darwin's eyes darted between both halves. "It's choosing." Gumball's ears flattened. "No." Another shockwave blasted outward. This one hit the cartoon side harder. A nearby lamppost melted into loose sketch lines before reforming shakily. A pedestrian briefly turned into a rough storyboard draft, unfinished face, missing color, before snapping back in fear. Cricket felt a sudden pull in his chest. The glowing web above flickered in response to him again. The crack in the sky pulsed twice. Hard. Darwin looked at him slowly. "It's reacting to your presence every time." Bill stepped protectively closer. "Why?" Cricket clenched his fists. "I don't know." But deep down, he had a guess. When they crossed the seam earlier, when they demonstrated compatibility, something had changed. The system had adapted. Now it was recalculating. Gumball pointed upward suddenly. "Look!" Inside the crack, shapes were forming again. Not the same unfinished entity from before. This time, the silhouette was sharper, more defined, less uncertain. It extended an arm through the fracture, long, smooth, almost perfectly rendered. No flickering, no hesitation. When its hand touched the glowing web, the entire net brightened in response. Stabilization protocol entering phase 2, the voice announced. The grid in the sky tightened. Squares shrank. Lines thickened. Cricket felt pressure around him, like the air itself was compressing. Darwin winced. It's increasing resolution density. Gumball glanced at him. You just made that up. No, I didn't. A sudden surge of light shot down one of the glowing veins and struck the street behind them. The pavement transformed completely, fully realistic, ultra-detailed, with tiny cracks and subtle color variation. But it didn't stop there. The realism spread like ink dropped into water. Fast. The edge of the transformation crept toward them. Alice stepped forward instinctively. We ain't letting it roll over us. Cricket watched as the advancing realism swallowed a parked car, turning it into a fully detailed vehicle with accurate reflections. The cartoon half of the street trembled in response, outlines thickening defensively. Two styles pushing against each other, like tectonic plates grinding. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. Cricket looked at Gumball. What happens if it decides one of us doesn't fit? Gumball didn't answer right away, because he was watching his own shadow fade, slightly thinner. Finally, he spoke. Then someone gets rendered out. Above them, the crack widened just enough for the sharper silhouette inside to step forward. And this time, it wasn't observing. It was enforcing. The sky above Elmore flickered like an old TV losing signal. Cricket Green stood in the middle of the street, staring upward as clouds turned into pixelated squares before snapping back into fluffy shapes. A moment later, the clouds morphed into realistic painted textures, then back into flat cartoon outlines. This is not normal, Tilly whispered dreamily, watching a bird freeze midair like it had been paused. Across the road, Gumball Watterson poked the air with a stick. The space around it rippled like water. Okay, Gumball said, forcing a grin. So the universe is melting, that's fine. Totally fine. Happens all the time. Darwin blinked. Does it? No, Gumball admitted. Suddenly, the ground beneath them split, not physically, but stylistically. One half turned into the warm pastel palette of Big City Green's rural world. The other half remained the chaotic mixed media landscape of Elmore. Bill Green stumbled out of the grocery store, now half hand-drawn, half CG1. Well, that ain't natural, Bill muttered. Grandma Alice marched forward with a rake over her shoulder. Who broke reality? I just finished fixing the mailbox from last week's cartoon explosion. A sharp, electronic buzz echoed through the town. From the horizon, a thin vertical line of pure white light appeared, like a tear in a piece of paper. It expanded slowly, cutting through buildings without damaging them, slicing the world visually instead of physically. Anea stepped forward, holding a tablet filled with glitching graphs. This isn't random, she said. The two animation styles are colliding at a structural level. The rules of both universes are trying to overwrite each other. Cricket scratched his head. So, like when Tilly and I try to decide what to watch, and we break the remote. Aeneas blinked. Yes, but with existence. The white tear suddenly pulsed, and the entire street froze. Everything stopped, except Cricket and Gumball. They looked around at the motionless world. Darwin was frozen mid-step. Tilly was stuck mid-twirl. Even the flickering sky had paused. Ah, Gumball said quietly. That's new. Cricket waved his hand in front of a frozen car. Did we win? No, Gumball replied. When reality freezes, nobody wins. The white tear widened, and from inside it stepped a shadowy, unfinished shape. It didn't have a clear design. It kept shifting, sometimes sketchy, sometimes realistic, sometimes pixelated. It was like an error message with legs. The figure's voice echoed, layered, and distorted. 2 incompatible narrative systems detected. Cricket tilted his head. "You talk funny." "I am the correction," the entity said. "This anomaly must be resolved. One universe must be removed." Gumball's ears dropped. Removed. Like cancelled. Erased. The word echoed across the frozen town. Cricket stepped forward bravely. "Well, that ain't happening. We just got here." "You are the foreign variable," the correction replied, pointing at the green stile bleeding into Elmore. "Your presence triggered instability." Gumball crossed his arms. "Excuse me? Elmore is unstable all the time. We once turned into clay for a whole episode." The correction's form flickered, calculating. Probability of dual existence, 0. Cricket glanced at Gumball. "I don't know what that means, but it sounds rude." The ground began to shake again. The frozen world cracked like glass. Pieces of scenery floated upward, breaking into fragments of different art styles. Bill's farm truck appeared briefly in the middle of Elmore High's hallway before dissolving into glowing lines. The water house flickered into a barn, then back again. The correction raised its arms. Selection process initiated. A massive spinning wheel appeared in the sky, half designed like a rustic wooden farm sign, half like a flashy Elmore game show prop. On one side it read, "Big City Greens." On the other, "The Amazing World of Gumball." The wheel began to spin. "No, no, no!" Darwin shouted, finally breaking free from the freeze effect. "We can't let it choose." Aeneas ran calculations frantically. If it finishes the spin, whichever universe it selects to erase will collapse permanently. Tilly stepped beside Cricket calmly. "Well, that just won't do." Cricket cracked his knuckles. "Okay, weird glitch monster. How do we stop it?" The correction's voice echoed again. "Conflict between styles creates instability. Only one tone can survive." Gumball's expression changed. "Wait," he said slowly. "What if that's the problem?" Everyone turned to him. "What if we're not supposed to fight the difference?" Gumball continued. "What if we're supposed to mix it?" The wheel spun faster, lightning crackling around it. Cricket grinned. "You mean like mashed potatoes and gravy?" "Exactly," Gumball shouted. "Two things that shouldn't work, but totally do." The correction hesitated. "Blending increases unpredictability." "Yeah," Cricket said proudly. "That's kinda our whole thing." The ground beneath them surged with color. The 2 art styles bled into each other, not clashing this time but merging. Tilly's soft pastel glow mixed with Elmore's chaotic textures. Darwin's bright orange shimmered with rustic sketch lines. The spinning wheel began to glitch. Aeneas looked up in realization. If we actively cooperate, the instability shifts from destructive to adaptive. Gumball smirked. Translation. We confuse it. The correction's form flickered violently. Error. Error. Coexistence not recognized. Cricket grabbed Gumball's hand. Then let's show it something new. Together, they ran toward the spinning wheel as reality shattered around them, ready to rewrite the rules instead of choosing sides. And the glitch began to spread faster than ever. Cricket and Gumball sprinted toward the spinning wheel as lightning cracked across the fractured sky. Behind them, Elmore twisted into something unrecognizable. Buildings stretched like rubber before snapping into blocky pixels. The Greens farm fence burst through the pavement of the Watterson neighborhood, corn stalks growing through sidewalks in fast-forward bursts of animation. The correction hovered above, its form splitting into multiple unfinished outlines. Coexistence is a structural impossibility, it repeated. Conflict is required for narrative stability. "Buddy," Gumball shouted while running. "Have you seen our lives? Stability is overrated." The spinning wheel roared louder, sparks shooting from its edges. The words "Big City Greens" and "The Amazing World of Gumball" flickered violently, each side trying to dominate the other. Cricket leaped onto a floating chunk of sidewalk that now looked like a wooden porch plank. "Okay, plan," Cricket yelled. "We don't have a plan," Gumball yelled back. "Exactly." Tilly suddenly appeared beside them, calm as ever, riding a drifting piece of sky like it was a magic carpet. "I believe the universe is confused," she said softly. "It thinks we are opposites." Aeneas, standing below with a glitching tablet, shouted upward, "Because structurally you are. One world operates on rural grounded humor and soft palates. The other thrives on chaotic absurdism and mixed media unpredictability." Darwin waved his arms. "That sounded important." "It is," Aeneas yelled. "If we keep acting like separate genres, the correction will force elimination." Cricket skidded to a stop in front of the wheel's base. Gumball landed beside him. They both stared up at the spinning selection arrow. Cricket looked at Gumball. "You ever milk a cow?" "No." "You ever fight a sentient hot dog?" "Yes." Cricket grinned. "Then let's trade." Gumball's eyes widened. "Oh." The spinning wheel slowed slightly as if listening. Cricket suddenly grabbed the arrow's base and pulled with all his strength. Instead of resisting, the arrow bent, turning into a stretchy cartoon noodle like something straight out of Elmore. Gumball blinked. "You're using our physics." "Yep," Cricket shouted. "And now you use ours." Gumball planted his feet firmly, no stretch, no squash, solid and grounded, like he was standing on farm soil. He grabbed a piece of floating glitch energy and, instead of letting it warp wildly, he held it steady. The glitch stabilized in his hands. The correction flickered violently. "Improper interaction detected. Styles interweaving." Darwin gasped. "It's confused." Aeneas scanned her tablet again. "They're rewriting the interaction rules. Instead of clashing systems, they're creating a hybrid framework." Cricket swung the noodle arrow wildly, tangling it around both sides of the wheel at once. "No more picking," he yelled. Gumball pressed the stabilized glitch energy against the center of the wheel. Instead of exploding, the wheel's surface began blending. The flashy neon game show lights softened into warm wood textures. The rustic planks gained glowing outlines. The bold letters merged into a single swirling emblem of both worlds. The sky stopped cracking. The floating debris paused mid-air, then gently lowered back to the ground. The correction's form became unstable, its edges dissolving like erased pencil lines. Dual-genre existence, recalculating. Tilly floated down, gracefully. "Perhaps the universe does not require a single tone," she suggested. "Perhaps it prefers harmony." Grandma, Alice, stomped forward with her rake. "You hear that, glitch ghost? We ain't going nowhere." Bill crossed his arms. "Family sticks together." Nicole Watterson suddenly appeared beside them, fierce as ever. "And no cosmic error is deleting my kids." Richard blinked behind her. "Wait, are we being deleted?" "Not anymore," Gumball said confidently. The correction tried one final time to expand, but its body now flickered with both art styles simultaneously, pastel blending with hyper-saturated chaos. "System overload," it whispered. Cricket looked up at it. "You don't gotta erase stuff to fix it," he said. "Sometimes you just gotta let things grow together." The spinning wheels shattered, not violently, but gently, into glowing particles that rained across Elmore like fireflies. The particles touched buildings, the environment subtly transformed. Elmore High now had a small vegetable garden out front. The Greens farm truck gained exaggerated cartoon expressions on its headlights. The Watterson house kept its shape, but its colors warmed slightly, blending tones from the Greens world. Darwin looked at his reflection in a window. "I look slightly sketchier." Gumball flexed. "And I feel weirdly wholesome." Aeneas examined the stabilized air. "The universes have synchronized," she concluded. "Not merged entirely, but linked. The instability has shifted into adaptability." The correction's final fragment flickered weakly. Coexistence. Accepted. And then it dissolved completely. Silence settled over the town. The sky returned to normal, though now it carried faint traces of both animation styles layered together. Cricket exhaled deeply. "So, did we win?" Gumball smiled. "No," he said. "We upgraded." Suddenly, a cow from the Greens farm wandered casually down the street past Banana Joe. Banana Joe stared. "Is that normal?" Cricket grinned at Gumball. "Probably not." Gumball grinned back. "Perfect." In the distance, a faint shimmer remained in the air, a reminder that the connection between their worlds wasn't fully closed. It wasn't broken anymore, but it wasn't finished either. And somewhere deep in the space between realities, something new had begun to form. The morning after the glitch stabilized felt suspiciously normal. Too normal. Cricket Green stood outside the Watterson house, holding a rake and staring at the sky. "Something's off," he muttered. The sky was bright blue. Birds chirped. A gentle breeze rustled leaves. Then a piano fell from the sky and smashed into the street beside him. Cricket didn't flinch. He slowly turned his head toward the flattened instrument. "That ain't normal." The piano popped back into the air like it was on a rubber band and disappeared with a cheerful boing. Gumball leaned out of his bedroom window. "Oh yeah, that happens sometimes," he called casually. "You get used to it." Cricket blinked. "You get used to random pianos?" Darwin popped up beside Gumball. "Last week, we got chased by a giant potato." "That was Tuesday," Gumball corrected. Cricket scratched his head. "Okay, so your world don't exactly follow rules." Aeneas walked out the front door holding a notebook. "Correction," she said calmly. "Our world follows cartoon logic. It simply doesn't adhere to traditional physical or narrative constraints." Cricket tilted his head. "You mean like gravity?" As if summoned by the word, the ground beneath Cricket vanished. He stayed standing in midair. Everyone stared at him. Cricket looked down. There was nothing under his feet, just a cartoonishly deep, scribbled abyss. He blinked. "Huh." He stayed suspended for 3 full seconds. Then he looked at the camera. "Oh no." He dropped instantly with a distant scream. Gumball winced. "Yeah, that's how it works." A moment later, Cricket climbed back up from the abyss, covered in soot but otherwise fine. "Okay," he said, brushing himself off. "That's different." Tilly floated down beside him, holding a butterfly. "I find it charming," she said. "Reality here behaves like imagination." Bill stepped outside cautiously. "I don't like it," he muttered. "Back home, if you fall in a hole, you stay in a hole." Nicole crossed her arms. "Welcome to Elmore," she said. where consequences are optional. Suddenly, a bus screeched past them, sideways, defying all geometry. Cricket pointed at it. "That ain't safe." "It's fine," Darwin said. "The bus only crashes when it's funny." Right on cue, the bus hit a mailbox and exploded into confetti. Everyone paused. A beat of silence. Then the bus reassembled itself and drove away like nothing happened. Cricket's jaw dropped. "This town's broken." Anais shook her head. "No, it's elastic." Gumball hopped down from the window and landed beside Cricket. "Here's the thing," Gumball explained. "In our world, logic bends for jokes. Physics is more of a suggestion." Cricket frowned thoughtfully. "Back home, if I mess up, I gotta fix it," he said. "If I plant crops wrong, they don't magically grow." As if offended by this statement, a random carrot sprouted instantly from the Watterson lawn. It winked. Cricket stared at it. "That's cheating." The carrot vanished in a puff of smoke. Anais adjusted her glasses. "The hybridization of our universes has increased the frequency of cartoon logic anomalies. It's spreading." Right on cue, Richard walked out of the house holding a sandwich the size of a car. "Breakfast," he offered. Bill stared at the sandwich. "That defies structural integrity." Richard shrugged. "It's fine. It only collapses if I think about it." He paused. The sandwich exploded. Richard blinked at the crumbs in his hands. "Oh." Cricket looked overwhelmed. "So y'all just live like this? Stuff happens just 'cause it's funny." Gumball grinned. "Pretty much." Cricket crossed his arms. "Well, that ain't right." The sky flickered briefly, just slightly. Anais noticed. "Be careful," she warned. "The more you resist the logic, the more unstable it may become." Cricket placed his hands on his hips defiantly. "I ain't resisting nothin'. I just think if there's a rule, it should make sense." Immediately, the ground beneath everyone turned into a giant rule book. Pages flipped rapidly under their feet. "Uh-oh," Darwin whispered. Words appeared in the sky. "Cartoon law. Number 1. If it's funny, it works." Cricket looked up at the floating word. "Well, that's a silly rule." The words shook violently. "Cartoon law number 2. Do not question cartoon law number 1. Gumball's eyes widened. "Oh, you messed up." The rulebook ground beneath them snapped shut like a giant mouth, launching everyone into the air. They landed in a heap on the lawn. Cricket groaned, sitting up. "Okay," he muttered. "Your world don't like criticism." Anais stood, brushing herself off. "It's not personal," she said. "Cartoon logic sustains itself through exaggeration and acceptance. Resistance creates backlash." Cricket looked determined. "Well, maybe it needs a little resistance." The air shimmered again, stronger this time. In the distance, buildings began stretching unnaturally tall, then shrinking. A fire hydrant grew legs and ran away screaming. Darwin pointed. "It's escalating." Gumball stared at Cricket. "Dude, you can't just challenge cartoon logic. It'll escalate until it wins." Cricket smirked. "Then maybe it's time somebody from the farm shows it how real rules work." The sky darkened slightly, not threatening but reactive. Somewhere deep in Elmore, a loud comedic drum roll began, and the town seemed ready to prove a point. The ground quivered beneath their feet, not violently, but in a rhythm, like a cartoon heartbeat. Cricket stood with his hands on his hips, glaring at the town square. "All right, Elmore," he muttered. "Let's see how you handle some real rules." Suddenly, a hot dog vendor's cart rolled past at top speed, inexplicably upside down. The cart bounced along the pavement with its legs spinning like gears. A wiener leapt out midair, somersaulted twice, and landed neatly back in the bun. Cricket blinked. "This is cheating," he said quietly. Gumball shrugged. It's not cheating. It's comedy physics. Cricket frowned. Well, I got rules. Rules that work. Gravity works. Cause and effect works. You do a thing, there's a result. Simple. Alice smirked. Sounds boring. But I like boring sometimes. Cricket didn't wait. He stomped on the pavement, and immediately a patch of ground near the bus stop sank like quicksand. Only instead of sucking him in, it formed perfect rectangular holes, each deep enough to trap something heavy, but completely predictable. The hot dog cart skidded into one hole, wheels spinning helplessly. The vendor yelped, arms flailing, before landing safely thanks to cartoon exaggeration. Darwin turned to Gumball. Look, it worked. Kinda. Gumball tilted his head. Wait, is he fighting cartoon logic with real logic? Cricket grinned. Exactly. You try funny physics, I'll try farming physics. Bill Green stepped forward. Son, you're thinking like a strategist. That's my boy. Across the street, the sky flickered again. Buildings stretched absurdly tall, bending in impossible curves, and then snapped back with a comical boing. Sound effects echoed like someone had rewound a VHS tape. Cricket glanced at the sky. Okay, time to reinforce the rules. He stomped again. The air shimmered as gravity reasserted itself. Trees stopped twisting mid-air. Windows stopped wobbling. Even the cartoonish clouds straightened into their proper puffy shapes. Tilly floated down beside him. It's like you're anchoring reality. Yes, Cricket said. That's exactly it. Gumball's eyes widened. Wait a minute. If he keeps doing that, cartoon logic can't do anything. Darwin nodded. He's literally stabilizing the town. The correction, or whatever, had been lurking in the glitched sky, had been gone since the last pulse, but the remnants of instability were still here. The half-cartoon, half-realized objects quivered as Cricket reinforced the rules. Objects behaved as they should. Gravity functioned predictably, and actions had proper consequences. Alice crossed her arms. So you're gonna turn my fun world into boring? Cricket shook his head. No, just balanced. Funny's fine, but stuff shouldn't hurt anyone unless it's supposed to. A bus rolled past, upside down, wheels spinning, horns blaring. Cricket stomped. The bus straightened in midair and landed perfectly on the road. Gumball blinked. Whoa, he just corrected it. The citizens of Elmore stared at the chaos slowing down. A pigeon that had been looping through the air in a figure 8 froze mid-flight, then gracefully landed on a lamppost. Darwin tilted his head. Do you think it likes him? Cricket chuckled. It don't matter if it likes me. Rules don't need to like anyone. They just work. Suddenly, a cloud of absurdity condensed above the greens. Cartoon physics objects, the flying piano, bouncing sandwiches, and mischievous hot dogs started converging toward them. Cricket leapt forward, planting his feet firmly on the ground. The flying objects slowed as they approached him, each obeying gravity and momentum correctly for the first time in Elmore history. The piano landed softly. The sandwich collapsed predictably. The hot dogs rolled to a stop on the pavement. Alice raised her eyebrows. He's like a walking gravity law. Gumball frowned. And he's messing with my rules. Cricket grinned. Your rules work for jokes. Mine work for reality. And when they clash, chaos happens. But someone's got to keep the chaos from hurting everyone. The greens began moving through the streets, leaving a trail of stable physics in their wake. Cars stopped wobbling, buildings straightened, trees no longer twisted like spaghetti. Darwin whispered to Gumball, "It's like they're patching the universe." Gumball nodded. Yeah, like reality antivirus software. From the sky, faint glitch lines shimmered, the remnants of the correction trying to reassert control. They bent and pulsed, testing the green's influence. Cricket planted his feet again. The glitch lines shivered, flickered, and recoiled. "That's right," Cricket muttered. "Rules win." Even the most exaggerated citizens of Elmore paused mid-action. Banana Joe stopped bouncing in mid-air. The giant marshmallow from the candy shop froze, perfectly balanced. Cricket looked over at Gumball and Darwin. "See that? Everything has a predictable outcome now. But it's still funny." Gumball's jaw dropped. "Wait, funny and rules? That's genius." Cricket smirked. "Yep, that's what farm kids bring to the city." A stray piano fell again, but this time it landed with a soft thud. No bouncing, no flying. The pianist's ghost rolled its eyes and walked off the scene. Tilly floated beside Cricket. "You've tamed the chaos without killing the fun." Cricket shrugged. "Just keep it within the lines, that's all." From somewhere above, the last of the glitch energy shimmered. It pulsed once, then receded, leaving the town of Elmore stabilized, but still alive, with cartoonish charm. Darwin laughed. "So the Greens just beat cartoon logic?" Gumball shook his head. "Not beat, balance. That's better than beating." Cricket looked over at the town. Rules and chaos can coexist. You just gotta show them who's boss. And with that, the Greens began walking through Elmore, ready to enforce balance while letting the hilarity continue, see she. Somewhere deep in the city, a random sandwich winked. Cricket sighed. "Well, at least it's predictable now." Gumball smirked. Predictably ridiculous. And with that, the stage was set for even bigger adventures. The streets of Elmore were alive with chaos, but now it had rules. Cricket Green marched down the cracked pavement, boots clomping, eyes sharp. Around him, the town still looked absurd, but every exaggerated movement followed predictable physics. Buildings swayed slightly but didn't collapse. Trees leaned but didn't snap. Even Banana Joe bounced in midair, yet landed gently each time. Darwin watched in awe. "He's like the chaos tamer." Gumball adjusted his ears, more like the laws of reality manager. Cricket approached the corner store where the shelves had been spinning like a carousel moments ago. He stepped inside. "Oh, whoa!" The cashier, a talking soda can, said nervously. "Everything's normal now?" Cricket nodded firmly. "For now, but let's keep it that way." He reached out, touching the spinning shelf. The rotation slowed, then stopped entirely. Products stayed upright, stacked correctly. The soda can blinked. "That's impressive," it said quietly. "I've never been upright for more than 5 seconds in my life." Meanwhile, outside, the town's cartoonish hazards escalated, testing Cricket's control. A massive cupcake rolled down the hill, bigger than a car. It smashed into a tree, bounced off a streetlight, then flew straight toward Cricket. Cricket didn't flinch. He planted both feet. The cupcake landed squarely in front of him, flattened slightly, then slid to a halt. Not a crumb was lost. Gumball stared. "You just stopped a giant dessert in its tracks." Cricket shrugged. "Rules work. Physics applies." Darwin frowned. "But the funny, it's missing something." Cricket considered that. "Funny is fine. It's chaos that hurts people or breaks a world I don't like. We can still have humor." He gestured to a floating hot dog cart. It bounced toward them wildly. Cricket stomped once. The cart's trajectory corrected midair, landing safely on the sidewalk, upright. Gumball clapped. "Okay, that's amazing." Tilly floated nearby, arms crossed. "You're effectively introducing farm logic into cartoon logic. But the cartoon world is resisting. The glitches are still present, just contained. Just then, a street lamp snapped upright and stretched absurdly tall before tipping over. Cricket dashed forward, intercepting it mid-fall. He twisted his body and planted it firmly back in place. The lamp now stood straight, wobbling slightly, but stable. Alice clapped. "Finally, someone's taking responsibility for this nonsense." Bill leaned on his shovel. "That's my boy. Don't let him scare you, son." Cricket nodded and ran across the street. The scene was escalating further. A school bus had elongated like a noodle, looping through the air multiple times. Students inside waved frantically, their limbs stretched impossibly. "All right," Cricket muttered, rolling up his sleeves. "Time to set the limits." He stomped once, then again. The bus slowed mid-air. Cricket adjusted the pressure of his foot, guiding it like a farmer steering a stubborn mule. Slowly, it landed on the street, perfectly aligned. The kids inside bounced gently before standing, unharmed. Darwin whispered to Gumball, "He's like a reality shepherd." Gumball nodded. "A chaos wrangler." But the cartoon world wasn't going down without a fight. A flock of birds swooped down, each one looping impossibly and flapping in impossible sequences. Cricket took a deep breath. He jumped. In midair, he grabbed one bird by the tail. It stretched like elastic, then snapped back perfectly normal. Cricket tossed it upward, where it glided safely into a tree. "Balance achieved," he muttered. Gumball grinned. "Okay, this is officially epic. He's taming cartoon logic, but leaving it fun." Suddenly, a cloud of floating anvils descended from above, spinning like pinwheels. The first anvil hit the ground and stopped. The second anvil hit the first and clattered harmlessly. Cricket darted forward, planting both feet. He intercepted the third anvil and flicked it aside, sending it safely into a nearby park. Aeneas approached, her notebook glitching slightly. "The hybridization is working. The green's influence is stabilizing the environment. Cartoon logic still exists, but it's being moderated." Cricket wiped sweat from his brow. "Yeah, moderation's key. You can't stop the chaos entirely. It keeps the world interesting, but you can keep it from hurting anyone or collapsing the town." Darwin smiled. "So, we can still have fun, but safely." Cricket nodded. "Exactly. Rules plus chaos equals controlled fun." A flock of musical notes floated toward them, bouncing as if alive. Cricket stomped, and they fell into a perfect line, creating a harmonized melody instead of scattering wildly. Gumball raised an eyebrow. "He's like composing the chaos." Tilly hovered, watching with fascination. "It's more than that. He's rewriting the interaction rules between physics and cartoon logic, creating a stable framework where both can coexist." Cricket grinned. "Rules first, fun second, but fun still counts." At that moment, a random piano dropped again. Cricket caught it midair, inspected it, then gently placed it upright on the ground. The keys shimmered, but didn't bounce. "Okay, now we're cooking," Gumball said, clapping. The town of Elmore, once a chaotic mess of impossible physics, now hummed with a balanced energy. Cartoon logic remained, but its effects were moderated. Chaos was still fun, but predictable. Cricket stood in the center of the street, hands on his hips. "There, order with fun intact." Darwin nudged him. "You really just tamed cartoon logic." Cricket smiled. "Just like we do on the farm, but with more explosions and pianos." From the sky, a faint shimmer of residual glitch energy pulsed one last time, but it recoiled, unable to destabilize the green's framework. Alice smirked. "Well, that's one way to keep the town from going kaboom." Gumball grinned. "And now, We can actually play with it, safely. Cricket chuckled. Yup, welcome to real rules, with a twist. The Greens had won the first round against cartoon logic, establishing order without destroying the fun. The streets of Elmore hummed with a new kind of energy, predictable, yet playful. The chaotic anomalies that had dominated the town the previous day were now moderated, stabilized by Cricket's firm, farming-honed sense of rules. But cartoon logic was persistent. It didn't just disappear. It tested boundaries, poked at limits, and occasionally yelped in frustration at being restrained. Cricket and the Greens moved down the main street, surveying the scene. A giant sandwich rolled past, wobbling dangerously, but landed softly on the pavement thanks to Cricket's earlier corrections. A piano dropped from a balcony, but bounced predictably into the correct upright position. Even the birds, who had looped infinitely in impossible aerial maneuvers, now flew in proper arcs, flapping at a steady rhythm. Cricket crossed his arms. Order, balance, fun, but safe. That's the rule. Stick to it, and everything's fine. Gumball and Darwin ran beside him, both grinning. You're like a reality referee, Darwin said, dodging a bouncing carrot. Or a chaos wrangler, Gumball added. From above, a faint pulse shimmered, the last of the glitch energy. It hovered like a test, a reminder that cartoon logic could strike again at any moment. The Greens had won control, but the universe was still watching, measuring, waiting. Suddenly, a giant cupcake rolled into the square. It barreled toward the group, absurdly large, with frosting like quicksilver, bouncing unpredictably. Cricket didn't flinch. He sprinted forward, boots pounding the street. The cupcake tilted mid-air, threatening to land on a fire hydrant, but Cricket intercepted it, twisting his body to catch it mid-tilt. With a firm push, he redirected it toward a vacant lot. The cupcake settled gently on the ground, perfectly intact. Gumball and Darwin stared. Did he just farm a cupcake? Darwin asked. Cricket grinned. Yep, farming logic works on anything. Fruit, vegetables, or giant desserts. A nearby hot dog cart leapt from a rooftop, its wheels spinning wildly. Cricket stomped twice. The cart dropped safely to the street, upright and unharmed. The vendor gave him a thumbs up. Alice chuckled. Finally, someone teaching your world the meaning of consequence. Bill nodded. He's not just stabilizing the town, he's training it. Tilly floated above, observing. You're creating a framework where both worlds coexist. Cartoon exaggeration is still present, but it can no longer override reality entirely. The hybridization is remarkable. Cricket adjusted his stance. Rules first, chaos second. That's the formula. If things happen in a way that could hurt someone, stop it. If it's just funny, let it happen. A massive anvil dropped from the sky, threatening to squash a lamppost. Cricket jumped, caught it with both hands, and gently set it down, upright and intact. The anvil quivered, as if acknowledging the new rules. Darwin whispered to Gumball. He's literally policing reality. Gumball grinned. Policing with style. Even the more exaggerated citizens of Elmore began to adapt. Banana Joe bounced mid-air, but landed predictably. The giant marshmallow from the candy shop stretched, then returned to its original shape without damage. Random pianos continued to fall, but all now obeyed gravity and momentum consistently. Cricket paused to survey the scene. Balance is key. Too much chaos, and someone gets hurt. Too little, and the fun dies. Keep both, and you get sustainable humor. Gumball tilted his head. You know, that's actually brilliant. Cricket smirked. I didn't farm brains for nothing. Suddenly, a wave of residual glitch energy surged. The last flickers of instability shot toward the greens. A fire hydrant sprouted legs and began marching toward them. A hot dog bounced in a perfect parabolic arc, and a tree's branches flailed like rubber snakes. Cricket didn't hesitate. He stomped once, twice, then a third time. Each object's trajectory corrected midair. The fire hydrant stopped at its proper spot. The hot dog landed on the sidewalk. The tree straightened. Aeneas looked at her glitching tablet. The Green's framework is now dominant. Cartoon logic is still active, but fully moderated. Every anomaly now adheres to the rules we're establishing. Cricket nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Order isn't about killing fun, it's about giving chaos boundaries. Gumball clapped. So we still get crazy stuff, but nobody dies? Cricket smiled. Exactly. You want flying pianos? Fine, just don't squash anyone. Tilly hovered nearby. This is unprecedented. The balance between cartoon exaggeration and grounded physics has never been achieved on this scale. Bill patted Cricket on the back. You done good, son. Cricket's gaze swept the city. Elmore still had its signature chaos, the strange angles, the bouncing objects, the exaggerated antics. But now, it followed rules. Consequences existed, laughter and fun coexisted with logic and safety. Even the glitch remnants recoiled. A faint pulse shimmered in the sky, then faded. The correction, if it had ever truly returned, was powerless against the Green's hybrid framework. Cricket exhaled deeply. All right, that's enough chaos wrangling for today. Gumball laughed. You're like a reality superhero. Darwin grinned. Or a chaos farmer. Alice smirked. Maybe both. The Wattersons and the Greens stood together, surveying the stabilized yet absurd city. Flying pianos continued to plop. Cupcakes rolled predictably, and hot dogs hopped obediently, all adhering to the new equilibrium. Cricket wiped his hand, satisfied. Chaos is fun, but rules make it safe. That's the lesson. Gumball nodded. And the best part? We can still have adventures without Elmore falling apart. Darwin added, or without giant cupcakes squashing us. Cricket chuckled. Exactly. Now, let's see what other mischief this town has in store. Within reason, of course. The city of Elmore settled into its new rhythm. Absurd, playful, yet balanced. And somewhere deep in the air, a faint shimmer reminded everyone that the world was still alive with possibility, waiting for the next round of hybrid chaos. The Greens had won, not by destroying cartoon logic, but by mastering it. And with that, a new era of balanced, humorous, and slightly chaotic adventures began. Elmore seemed calm, almost peaceful. The chaos that had dominated the town had been moderated, yet a faint tension lingered in the air. Cricket Green, standing in the middle of the main street, could feel it. A subtle hum beneath the pavement, a faint shimmer in the sky. The town had been stabilized, but something deeper was stirring. I don't like it, Bill muttered, leaning on his shovel. It feels wrong. Too quiet. Cricket squinted upward. The sky, bright blue moments ago, now had a subtle ripple, like sunlight reflected off water. It wasn't threatening, but it was unnatural. Gumball and Darwin were nearby, tossing a bouncy ball between them. The ball froze midair. Gumball frowned. Why did it stop? Cricket tilted his head. Something's interfering with the rules. Or maybe creating new ones. Aeneas approached, holding her glitching tablet. The residual energy from the last glitch is stabilizing, but I detect a secondary pattern. It's faint, but persistent, originating deep within the city. Tilly floated beside Cricket. So there's a core? Like a source of instability? Cricket nodded slowly. That's what it feels like. Everything we've dealt with so far, the floating pianos, bouncing cupcakes, disappearing streets, it's just symptoms. The disease isn't the chaos itself, it's coming from somewhere. Gumball's ears twitched. You mean there's like A boss glitch? Darwin nodded. Yeah, like the final level of a video game. Bill raised an eyebrow. You sure you're not just imagining it, kids? Cricket shook his head. Nope, I've felt it since the glitch first appeared. Something in the core of this hybrid world is generating instability. If we don't find it, Elmore will never be fully safe. Alice smirked. Well, that sounds like an adventure. Nicole Watterson appeared, arms crossed. Just be careful. If it's deep in the city, it's probably not going to be polite. The Greens, along with the Wattersons, began moving through the streets. The town still retained its stabilized hybrid logic. Flying objects followed predictable trajectories. Exaggerated actions were moderated, and cartoon physics bent only within safe limits. But as they approached downtown, the hum grew stronger, pulsing through the ground beneath their feet. Cricket stopped in front of a cracked building. The glass windows shimmered, flickering between transparency, sketches, and fully rendered surfaces. This is where it's strongest, he said. We're close. Darwin pointed at the building. Look, the walls keep shifting. Cricket studied it. It's not random. It's reacting to our presence. Anais adjusted her glasses. The patterns are almost alive. They respond to proximity and motion. This isn't just a glitch. It's conscious. Tilly's eyes widened. Conscious? Like it knows we're coming? Exactly, Cricket said. We're not just dealing with chaos. There's intent behind it. Something or someone is controlling it. From the building, a faint distortion appeared. Lines of glowing energy extended upward, crisscrossing like a web. Where the energy touched, streets distorted subtly, pavement warping, streetlights elongating, cartoon objects twitching. Cricket frowned. That web, it's like the central hub of the instability. Everything flows from it. Gumball stepped forward cautiously. So, if we take out the hub, we fix the city. Cricket shook his head. Maybe, but we have to be careful. This isn't just physical damage. Destroy it blindly and the city itself could collapse. Or worse, the hybrid world could fracture completely. Alice tapped her rake thoughtfully. So we need a plan. Cricket nodded. Exactly. First, we locate the source inside the building. Then we figure out how it's generating the instability. And finally, we neutralize it without breaking everything else. Darwin looked around nervously. Sounds dangerous. Bill nodded. Danger's fine, if it saves the town. Cricket led the group inside. The interior of the building was a visual maze, floors twisting at impossible angles, doors opening into impossible hallways, and shadows that shifted unnaturally. Yet the Greens' grounded logic stabilized their movements. Every step followed predictable physics. Anais scanned the area. The patterns are denser here. The source is generating feedback loops. Every action we take could ripple outward. We need to proceed methodically. Cricket nodded. Let's move. As they ventured deeper, the distortion grew stronger. The walls flickered between sketch, 3D render, and fully colored cartoon. Gravity shifted slightly in areas, pulling or pushing them unexpectedly, but Cricket's presence moderated it. Then, in a central chamber, they found it. A pulsating core of energy suspended midair. It wasn't a machine, nor a person, but a mass of ever-shifting light and form. The colors blended both worlds' aesthetics, soft pastels of big city greens intertwined with the bold, chaotic lines of Elmore. The core pulsed rhythmically, sending waves of distortion outward. Floating objects spun in orbit around it, caught in a gravitational field that bent reality. The energy almost seemed to breathe. Darwin whispered, "It's alive." Cricket stepped forward, fists clenched. "Not alive. It's a system with intent. Something made it to maintain the instability. It's defending itself." Gumball's eyes widened. "You mean it knows we're here?" Cricket nodded. "Exactly. This isn't a passive glitch anymore. It's a central intelligence. If we're going to fix the city, we'll have to face it directly." A pulse radiated from the core. The walls flickered violently, and the room seemed to stretch. Alice muttered, "Well, it's polite enough to wait for introductions." Cricket studied the core. This is it, the source of the instability. If we neutralize it without destroying the hybrid balance, the city will be safe. If we fail, well, everything we've fixed could unravel in an instant. Darwin gulped. "Sounds like it's time for the ultimate showdown." Cricket adjusted his stance, boots firmly planted. "No shortcuts. We stabilize, neutralize, and protect. That's the plan." And with that, the Greens, the Wattersons, and Tilly prepared to confront the pulsating, intelligent heart of Elmore's hybrid chaos, ready to face the source of the instability. The pulsating core hung in the air like a living storm, its colors shifting between the soft pastels of big city greens and the sharp chaos of Elmore. Every pulse sent waves of distortion through the chamber, causing the walls to twist, the floor to ripple, and gravity to flicker unpredictably. Cricket Green tightened his fists. "All right, team. Keep your feet on the ground, literally. Watch every step. Nothing here behaves normally." Darwin stumbled slightly as the floor beneath him flexed like a trampoline. You mean nothing at all?" "Exactly," Cricket said calmly. "This core is enforcing its own rules, bending physics and logic to defend itself. Step lightly, think quickly, and don't panic." Gumball raised an eyebrow. "It's like it's alive, like it knows we're here." Aeneas nodded, scanning her glitching tablet. "It's not alive biologically, but it's clearly sentient in function. Every ripple, every pulse responds to observation and action. If we try something aggressive, it will escalate." Tilly hovered beside Cricket. "So a direct attack could be catastrophic." Cricket clenched his jaw. "We need strategy, subtlety, precision. Stabilize first, neutralize second." The core pulsed again, sending a wave that made the walls stretch upward unnaturally. Objects in the room, pianos, bouncing sandwiches, oversized hot dogs, hovered in orbit around it. Some looped like satellites. Others tumbled erratically before correcting themselves mid-air. Alice muttered, "Well, it's a messy one." Bill grinned. "Messy, yes, but predictable if we follow Cricket's rules." Cricket stepped forward carefully, planting his boots firmly. "I can influence the environment around me. I'll stabilize the objects first. Give us a safe perimeter." He raised his arms. The air shimmered subtly as gravity reasserted itself around him. The floating pianos slowed their rotations. Hot dogs stopped bouncing wildly and aligned neatly on the ground. Cupcakes hovered gently instead of tumbling. Even the floor's ripples calmed where Cricket stood. Gumball blinked. "Whoa, he's like a gravity magnet." Darwin whispered, "No, more like a reality anchor." Aeneas frowned, "But the core is still pulsing. Its influence extends beyond Cricket's field. We need to figure out how it's generating the instability. Otherwise, we're just holding back symptoms." Cricket nodded. "Exactly. Observe, analyze, and respond. That's how we neutralize it without destroying everything else." The core pulsed brighter, sending a series of fast waves. The walls morphed into spirals, windows elongated, and gravity flickered again. A floating piano rolled toward Cricket, but this time it hesitated mid-air. The core seemed to study him, testing his influence. Cricket planted both feet firmly, raising a hand. The piano aligned perfectly upright, landing gently. The core's pulse flickered, like a heartbeat disrupted, but it didn't stop. Alice stepped forward. "It's testing you. Whatever you do, it adapts." Bill chuckled. "Then let's give it something to adapt to." Cricket glanced at the greens. "Anais, Gumball, Darwin, cover me. Stabilize surroundings while I analyze its energy patterns. Tilly, stay close to me. Your floating ability can help contain localized distortions." Tilly nodded. "Understood." The group spread out. Gumball and Darwin began stabilizing floating objects. Anais calculated energy pulses with her tablet, and Tilly created a hovering shield around Cricket. Cricket focused on the core. Its energy swirled, forming a chaotic mix of pastel tones and sharp cartoon lines. Tiny loops of reality. The bouncing hot dogs, spinning pianos, and elongated objects traced patterns in the air. Each loop represented a feedback mechanism, a reinforcement of the hybrid instability. Cricket muttered, "So it's not just random. It's maintaining itself, repairing anomalies as they occur. Every action, every ripple strengthens its existence. It's self-preserving." Gumball leaned in. "You mean it's smart enough to fight back?" "Exactly," Cricket said. "And if we try to destroy it outright, it will resist violently. We have to neutralize the feedback loops first." Anais studied her tablet. "The loops are rhythmic, predictable if we match their timing. But the amplitude changes depending on interaction. We need precise synchronization." Cricket nodded. "Then that's our approach. Stabilize the loops, weaken the feedback, and only then neutralize the core. Everyone ready?" The team nodded. Tilly floated slightly higher, forming a protective barrier. Darwin gripped a bouncy ball, Gumball flexed, and Anais adjusted her tablet's calculations. Cricket took a deep breath. "On my mark." A pulse radiated from the core, sending ripples through the chamber. The loops of reality, hot dogs, cupcakes, floating pianos traced chaotic arcs. Cricket stomped once, adjusting gravity and stabilizing the first wave. The objects hesitated midair. A second pulse hit. Cricket held firm. The loops aligned imperfectly, but they no longer threatened immediate chaos. Gumball shouted, "It's working!" Darwin added, "But it's fighting back." The core pulsed again, brighter and faster. Reality twisted violently, but Cricket's influence expanded. Each stabilized object reduced the amplitude of the feedback. Slowly, the core's chaotic bursts weakened, and its pulsing rhythm became erratic. Alice grinned. "He's bending it to his will." Bill patted Cricket on the shoulder. "That's my boy. Show 'em how farm rules work." Cricket exhaled, concentrating. "We're not done yet. Stabilize the loops completely. Once they're contained, we can address the core itself." The Greens and Wattersons worked together, turning the hybrid chaos into a semi-stable, predictable environment. The core pulsed less aggressively, as if testing, evaluating, and slowly conceding control. Cricket muttered, "Almost there. Just a little longer." The chamber vibrated with energy as the Greens and the Wattersons worked in unison. Every pulse from the core sent ripples through the walls, twisting the corridors, elongating doors, and warping gravity. Yet Cricket's influence held firm, a stable island in a sea of chaos. Anais's tablet flickered with streams of equations. The feedback loops are weakening, but they're adapting. The core is learning from our interventions. Cricket frowned. Of course it is. Anything that maintains itself will adapt when challenged, but it's still manageable. We just need to maintain synchronization. Tilly hovered above, creating a shield that glimmered with her own energy. I can contain localized distortions, but the core's range is expanding. If it pulses too strongly, our containment will fail. Gumball and Darwin work together to stabilize floating objects. Pianos, cupcakes, and hot dogs now obeyed the rules more consistently. Each stabilization weakened the core's defenses. But the intensity of its pulses grew sharper. The chamber's lights flickered as a new wave of distortion radiated outward. Objects stretched impossibly long before snapping back into position. The walls bent like liquid, folding into impossible geometries. The core pulsed faster, its color oscillating violently between pastel pinks and bold cartoon lines. Cricket clenched his fists. This is it. The next pulse will be the strongest. Everyone brace yourselves. Aeneas nodded. We've calculated the timing. If we synchronize correctly, we can disrupt the feedback loops completely. Cricket raised his hand. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. The core pulsed, sending a massive wave through the chamber. Gravity flipped briefly, objects spun uncontrollably, and the floor undulated like a living carpet. Cricket stomped firmly, planting both feet. His influence radiated outward, stabilizing the first layer of chaos. Objects hesitated midair, hovering predictably. Gumball and Darwin simultaneously reinforced the secondary layer, guiding flying hot dogs and bouncing cupcakes back into orderly arcs. Aeneas adjusted her calculations, sending precise energy pulses that aligned the remaining loops. Tilly strengthened the shield, containing residual distortion. The core pulsed again, brighter and more erratic. This time, it seemed to respond directly to Cricket's influence, twisting violently as if testing his strength. Cricket took a deep breath. Keep the loops contained, don't let them escape. Alice raised her rake. Got it! She flicked a nearby floating chair, redirecting it toward a stable landing. It snapped into place perfectly. Bill stomped beside Cricket. You're doing it, son. Keep it steady. The core's pulses became rapid fire, sending bursts of chaos in multiple directions. Gravity inverted, objects multiplied, and cartoonish distortions stretched to their limits. Yet Cricket's framework held. The chaos bent, but it no longer broke. Darwin whispered to Gumball, "It's like it's fighting back, but failing." Gumball nodded. Yeah, he's anchoring the chaos before it can explode. Aeneas studied her tablet. The feedback loops are at critical mass. If we push now, we can destabilize the core itself. Cricket's jaw tightened. Then that's what we'll do. Tilly, strengthen the containment. Everyone else, prepare for final synchronization. The chamber pulsed violently as the core reacted, sending waves that twisted the floor into a spiral staircase, then back into flat tiles. Objects orbited the core like satellites, caught in a chaotic gravitational field. Cricket stepped closer. Here we go. Final phase. He stomped once, twice, then raised both arms. A shock wave of stabilization radiated outward. The floating objects froze in midair, forming perfect, predictable patterns. The core pulsed violently, its rhythm breaking as the loops collapsed into themselves. Aeneas adjusted her tablet one final time, applying counter-frequency now. The combined force of the Cricket's grounding, Tilly's shield, and the synchronized loops from Gumball, Darwin, and Alice created a counterwave that struck the core. The pulsating mass shimmered, then fractured into multiple smaller fragments. Each fragment contained a micro-loop of instability, but they were weaker, scattered, and manageable. The chamber trembled as the core's main body began to shrink, pulsing less intensely. The walls stopped twisting, gravity stabilized, and the objects slowly returned to the floor. The chaotic energy that had threatened to destabilize the entire city now dissipated into harmless glimmers of light. Cricket exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. It's contained, not destroyed, but neutralized. Gumball grinned. We did it! The core's not pulsing out of control anymore. Darwin nodded. And the city feels normal again. Aeneas adjusted her tablet. The core is still active, but the feedback loops have been fully suppressed. It will no longer generate uncontrolled instability. However, it's self-preserving. If provoked, it could reactivate. Tilly floated closer. So it's like a sleeping volcano, dormant but alive. Cricket looked at the fragmenting core. Exactly. We've neutralized the threat without destroying it. The hybrid world can continue to exist, both Big City Green's logic and Elmore cartoon physics, but in a balanced state. Bill smiled. That's my boy. Farm rules save the day again. Alice smirked. And you did it without breaking everything. I like that. Cricket nodded. Balance is everything. Chaos is fun, but only when it doesn't hurt anyone. The chamber shimmered as the last fragments of the core hovered harmlessly in place. The town of Elmore, now fully stabilized, awaited the Green's next move, ready for whatever hybrid adventure lay ahead. The fragments of the core hovered silently, pulsating faintly like embers of a fire that refused to die. The chamber, once a chaotic storm of cartoon and real-world physics, now seemed almost serene. The Greens and the Wattersons stood amidst the stabilized remnants, catching their breath. Cricket Green wiped sweat from his forehead. We've neutralized the main source, but the residual energy is still present. We have to make sure it doesn't reassemble. Aeneas analyzed her tablet, scrolling rapidly through the streams of data. The fragments contain self-correcting loops. If left unchecked, they could gradually re-establish the instability. But if we isolate them and synchronize the surrounding environment, we can permanently suppress their influence. Gumball blinked. So, we have to babysit the core forever. Darwin tilted his head. Or, maybe we can contain it. Cricket nodded. Exactly. Containment, not destruction. We don't want to erase this hybrid world. It's part of Elmore now. We just need to stabilize it. Tilly floated above the fragments, her protective aura expanding. I can hold the energy fragments in a stable field, but the longer we wait, the more they'll try to interact with each other and reform. Alice twirled her rake thoughtfully. So, we act fast, coordinate perfectly, and lock it down. Cricket glanced at the fragments. Each one flickered between pastel Big City Green's tones and sharp, exaggerated Elmore patterns. They pulsed rhythmically like tiny hearts, reacting to every movement the team made. Step 1, Cricket said. Anchor the environment. We prevent any new chaotic loops from forming. Step 2, isolate the fragments. Step 3, reinforce containment so they can't connect. Bill patted Cricket on the shoulder. Sounds like a plan. You lead, son. Cricket stomped firmly. The chamber vibrated with controlled energy as his influence spread outward. Floating pianos aligned. Hot dogs stopped bouncing unpredictably, and cupcakes hovered perfectly still. The very air seemed to solidify, giving the greens a stable platform from which to act. Gumball and Darwin began guiding the fragments, using precise pushes and nudges. Each fragment resisted, spinning and pulsing erratically, but with Cricket's influence, their movements became predictable. Anais calculated timing sequences on her tablet. We have a narrow window. If we synchronize containment precisely, the fragments can't reactivate fully. We need simultaneous stabilization from all angles. Cricket nodded. Everyone ready? Ready! Gumball and Darwin shouted in unison. Tilly expanded her shield to encompass all fragments. A soft glow surrounded them, containing their pulsing energy in a controlled field. Cricket stomped again, sending a shockwave of stabilization through the chamber. The fragments flickered, but remained within Tilly's containment. Anais adjusted the counter-frequency. Aligning. Now. Each fragment's rhythm began to slow. The chaotic loops that had sustained the instability faltered, collapsing in on themselves. The energy pulses weakened. Gravity normalized. Cartoon objects that had once spun, bounced, or floated wildly now adhered to predictable physics. Gumball grinned. It's working. The fragments are calm. Darwin nodded, bouncing slightly in excitement. They're behaving like normal objects. Cricket stepped closer. Not just normal, stabilized. But don't celebrate yet. We need one final reinforcement. He raised both arms. Energy radiated outward, connecting each fragment to the floor, the walls, and the surrounding environment. Each pulse from the fragments now followed the stabilized rules, unable to form new chaotic loops. Alice clapped her hands. There, that's containment, farm style. Bill smiled. You've done it, son. Full control, no casualties, no destroyed city. Tilly's shield shimmered one last time. The fragments are fully stabilized. Any future pulses will be contained immediately. The hybrid world is secure. Cricket exhaled deeply, lowering his arms. Elmore and Big City Green's logic are balanced. Chaos is still present, but controlled. Fun is safe again. Anais nodded. The core is neutralized, and the environment is fully synchronized. The city can now operate normally without risk of escalating instability. Gumball looked around, smiling. So, we beat the hybrid chaos? Cricket nodded. We didn't destroy it. We tamed it. That's how rules and chaos coexist. Balance is the key. Darwin grinned. And the town's still crazy enough to be fun. Cricket chuckled. Exactly. Chaos with boundaries, fun with safety. That's the lesson. Outside, the city of Elmore shimmered in a new light. Buildings, streets, and citizens moved in unpredictable, but safe ways. Cartoon physics still existed, exaggerated and humorous, but within the rules the Greens had reinforced. Reality and absurdity coexisted, each respecting the other. Cricket looked at the team, pride in his eyes. We've done it. The instability has a source. We neutralized it, and now the hybrid world can thrive. But remember, this is just the beginning. There will always be new challenges, always new chaos, always adventures. Alice smirked. Sounds like my kind of town. Bill nodded. And my kind of son. Cricket's gaze shifted to the fragments of the core, now hovering harmlessly, contained and stabilized. Let's make sure Elmore and Big City Green stay safe together. And with that, the Greens, the Wattersons, and their allies prepared to leave the chamber, ready for whatever new hybrid chaos the city might throw at them next. The source of instability had been found, neutralized, and contained. Elmore was safe for now, but the pulse of adventure lingered in the air, reminding everyone that the line between chaos and order was thin. And the next challenge was always just around the corner. The city of Elmore felt different now. Not silent, not lifeless, but balanced. Chaos and order had found an uneasy truce. Buildings still wobbled slightly when exaggerated cartoon logic demanded it, and giant cupcakes bounced across sidewalks, but the objects obeyed rules now, predictable enough to prevent disaster. Cricket Green stood at the center of the town square, boots planted firmly on the pavement. The Greens and the Wattersons surrounded him, their eyes scanning the streets. Each team member had a role. Gumball and Darwin continued to monitor floating and bouncing objects. Aeneas kept her tablet active to detect residual instability, and Tilly maintained her protective shield around the energy fragments of the core. Cricket exhaled deeply. We neutralized the source of the instability, contained the fragments, and synchronized the environment. The hybrid world is stable for now. Darwin bounced slightly. For now? You mean it could get messy again? Cricket shook his head with a small smile. It won't collapse unless someone disrupts the balance. Chaos exists, yes, but only within the framework we've reinforced. Fun can still happen, but it's predictable enough to be safe. Gumball tilted his head. So, Elmore can still be crazy, but not explode? Exactly, Cricket said. That's the balance. Chaos with boundaries, humor with safety. Alice spun her rake thoughtfully. It's like the town finally learned some discipline. Bill chuckled. Or maybe it's just respecting Cricket's rules. Tilly floated closer, her shield shimmering softly. The fragments are fully stabilized. Their influence is contained. If any new pulse occurs, the system will absorb it without destabilizing the city. Cricket nodded. Good. That means we've restored equilibrium. Both worlds can coexist. City Green's logic and Elmore's cartoon physics have been integrated in a way that's sustainable. Aeneas looked up from her tablet. It's fascinating. The hybrid system is adaptive. If new anomalies arise, the framework we've created will moderate them automatically. The town is effectively self-correcting now. Darwin grinned. So, the town can be crazy, but smart crazy? Gumball laughed. Smart crazy? I like that. Cricket's eyes scanned the horizon. Despite the stabilization, faint ripples of residual energy still shimmered above the city. Not dangerous, but noticeable. A reminder of the hybrid nature of the world. Those fragments won't cause trouble on their own, Cricket explained. But they serve as a reminder. Chaos is always present. Balance isn't permanent. It requires awareness, adaptation, and teamwork. Alice smirked. Well, we've got a whole team for that, don't we? Bill nodded proudly. Exactly. You, your siblings, and these city folks. Together, we can handle whatever comes next. Cricket looked at the floating fragments, now calm and contained. It's not just about stopping chaos, it's about guiding it. Order doesn't mean boring. Fun doesn't mean dangerous. That's the lesson we've learned. At that moment, a hot dog bounced gently past Darwin. He caught it with a grin. Safe, but still awesome. Gumball laughed. Yeah, finally, chaos that makes sense. The Greens and Wattersons shared a quiet moment, acknowledging the hybrid city they had saved. They had faced the source of instability, battled the chaotic core, and restored equilibrium. And now, as the sun shone on Elmore, the town thrummed with a calm energy, a balance between absurdity and order, between chaos and rules. The citizens of Elmore began to notice the change immediately. Banana Joe bounced down the street, looping once in the air before landing perfectly upright. The school bus, which had once stretched like a rubber noodle, now elongated and contracted predictably, passengers safely inside. Even the talking soda cans in the corner store remained in their assigned places, no longer spinning uncontrollably. Gumball pointed excitedly. "Look, even Banana Joe's bounce isn't trying to kill anyone." Darwin laughed. "It's like the town finally got its act together, in its own ridiculous way." Cricket Green watched the scene unfold with satisfaction. "It's subtle, but the rules we've enforced are working. Cartoon logic still exists, but it's moderated by the hybrid framework. The town can behave wildly, but consequences are predictable now." Anais adjusted her tablet, analyzing residual energies. The fragments of the core remain stable. Any attempt at forming new anomalies is counteracted immediately. The hybrid system has self-correcting properties. Elmore is effectively learning from itself. Tilly hovered above, scanning the skies. "I've never seen anything like this. The hybrid energy is now harmonious. It reacts, adapts, but it no longer overwhelms reality. Chaos exists, but in equilibrium." Darwin clutched a bouncing hot dog. "So, we saved the town, and it's still fun?" Cricket smiled. "Exactly. Fun doesn't have to destroy the city. Chaos doesn't have to break the rules. Balance restores both." Alice leaned on her rake, watching a floating piano settle neatly on the sidewalk. "I like this version of Elmore. Dangerous enough to be exciting, but safe enough to survive." Bill patted Cricket on the back. "That's the lesson of farm life, son. Chaos exists, but structure keeps everyone alive. Looks like you taught a city that too." Nicole Watterson appeared, arms crossed, but smiling slightly. "Cricket, the city owes you more than just stabilization. You've given it a framework that actually works. People can enjoy themselves without the fear of catastrophic cartoon accidents." Cricket nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "We didn't destroy the chaos. We guided it. Fun still exists, but it's now constructive instead of destructive." Gumball looked around at the citizens adjusting to their new reality. "And they're loving it! Look, everybody's still doing wacky stuff, but no one's getting squashed by a flying piano." Darwin jumped up. "It's like controlled insanity." Anais tapped her tablet one final time. "This framework will continue to stabilize itself. The hybrid city can now function independently. Future anomalies will still occur, but they will never reach the uncontrolled levels we faced before." Cricket surveyed the streets one last time. The floating cupcakes bounced predictably. The pianos dropped safely, and the citizens moved in exaggerated, yet harmless patterns. "Elmore is safe, balanced, and still fun," he said quietly. Alice smirked. "Mission accomplished. And I'd say it's about time someone finally brought sense to this city." Bill nodded. "And in a way that lets it stay crazy. That's the perfect balance." The Greens and the Wattersons shared a proud, quiet moment. The hybrid chaos had been tamed without eliminating the charm of either world. Both logic and cartoon physics coexisted harmoniously. The city was alive, vibrant, and, most importantly, safe. A faint shimmer of residual energy drifted in the sky above, a gentle reminder that chaos would always exist. But now, it had boundaries. Gumball grinned. "Looks like Elmore's finally smart crazy." Darwin laughed. "Safe chaos. I love it." Cricket chuckled softly. "Balance restored. But remember, keeping it this way will always take teamwork." And for the first time in a long time, Elmore felt like a city that could survive its own absurdity and thrive in it. As the afternoon sun bathed Elmore in a warm glow, the citizens began to interact with the stabilized chaos in ways they never could before. Hot dog carts rolled predictably down the streets, bouncing only when appropriate. Balloons floated in orderly arcs above the park. their exaggerated shapes still comical, but now entirely safe. Even the wacky squirrels of Elmore High School hopped between lampposts in perfect timing, no longer careening into buildings. Gumball and Darwin raced across the square, chasing a giant bouncing watermelon that had been perfectly tamed by Cricket's stabilization field. "This is amazing!" Gumball shouted, leaping onto the fruit and rolling along its surface. "It's still chaotic, but we can survive it." Darwin laughed. "Yeah, no pianos falling on our heads this time." Cricket watched them carefully, a smile tugging at his lips. "This is exactly what I wanted. Chaos exists, but it's manageable. Fun is preserved, and the city is safe." Anais adjusted her tablet, monitoring the hybrid energy flowing gently throughout the town. The fragments of the core remain perfectly balanced. The feedback loops that once threatened the city are fully neutralized. Any anomalies will now self-correct before causing harm. Alice leaned on her rake, observing a group of citizens interacting with a bouncing candy machine. "You've basically rewritten the rules of this city," she said. "Elmore will never be the same, but in a good way." Bill chuckled. "A city that respects the rules, but keeps its wild side? That's a lesson even farm towns could learn from." Cricket's gaze drifted toward the fragments hovering harmlessly in the sky above the city square. They pulsed faintly, like quiet reminders of the battle they'd just won. "We didn't destroy the source of instability. We guided it. That way, the city keeps its character and learns balance at the same time." Tilly floated next to him, her protective aura flickering gently as she scanned the surroundings. "The system is self-sustaining now. Any residual energy will integrate safely into the hybrid environment. Elmore is fully stabilized." Gumball jumped off the watermelon, brushing his hands together. "So, chaos exists, but it won't kill us anymore. I like this version of the city." Darwin grinned. "Safe insanity, that's perfect." Anais looked at Cricket seriously. "The hybrid framework you've created is unprecedented. You've essentially merged two entirely different realities and established a functioning balance. It's remarkable." Cricket's smile grew broader. "Thanks, Anais. But this isn't just me. Everyone played a role. Gumball, Darwin, Tilly, Alice, Bill, they all helped stabilize the sea. Balance isn't achieved by one person. It's a team effort." As the Greens and the Wattersons moved through the city, the citizens began to cheer. Bouncing objects and exaggerated antics were now celebrated as entertainment rather than hazards. Children ran through the square, chasing floating cupcakes that gently bobbed above them. Adults laughed as animated signs bent and stretched, perfectly timed to slapstick humor without causing harm. Cricket looked around, his chest swelling with pride. This is what balance looks like. Chaos, fun, logic. They're all part of the same system now, and it's thriving." Gumball and Darwin ran up to him, faces flushed with excitement. "We did it! The town's crazy, but safe!" Darwin shouted. Gumball added, "And it's even more fun than before." Cricket chuckled. "Exactly. That's the real victory. The town didn't just survive, it leveled up." The hybrid world of Elmore, once teetering on the edge of uncontrolled chaos, had found equilibrium. Chaos and logic, humor and safety, absurdity and order, all coexisted in a carefully maintained harmony. And as the Greens and the Wattersons looked around, it was clear that this balance would be the foundation for countless adventures yet to come. As the sun began to set, the streets of Elmore glowed with a warm golden light, reflecting off buildings that now seemed simultaneously ordinary and absurd. Citizens gathered in the town square, watching floating cupcakes hover gently, bouncing just enough to be entertaining. Even Banana Joe performed a controlled series of flips, landing perfectly each time, much to the delight of the children. Gumball and Darwin darted around, helping direct the citizens safely through the playful chaos. "Look, Mom," Darwin shouted. "Even the signs aren't trying to crush anyone." Nicole Watterson smiled, hands on her hips. "Cricket, you did something incredible. You didn't just stabilize the city, you taught it to play safely with itself." Cricket nodded, watching the fragments of the core, still floating in a calm orbit above the square. It wasn't easy. The hybrid world wanted to resist, to maintain pure chaos. But with patience, teamwork, and understanding, we guided it rather than destroying it. That's the difference between control and dominance. Aeneas closed her tablet with a satisfied click. The core fragments will remain contained. Any attempts to reintroduce uncontrolled instability will automatically self-correct. The city has become a self-sustaining system. Alice adjusted her rake, a small smirk on her face. And yet, it's still ridiculous enough to be fun. I like that balance. Bill clapped Cricket on the shoulder. "That's my boy. You took what could have been a disaster and made it a lesson for everyone. Chaos doesn't have to be destructive. It just needs a little guidance." Tilly floated higher, her protective shield shimmering faintly around the core fragments. The system is fully stabilized. The hybrid energy is harmonious. Elmore is safe, but it still has its charm. Cricket turned to Gumball and Darwin. "And you two, what's your take?" Gumball grinned, bouncing lightly on a stable cupcake. "It's awesome. Crazy, but safe. I mean, we can still have adventures without worrying about getting flattened by a piano." Darwin laughed. "Yeah, safe insanity is the best kind." Cricket chuckled. "Exactly. That's the ultimate lesson. Chaos exists, fun exists, but balance ensures everyone thrives." The townspeople cheered, waving at the Greens and the Wattersons. Children laughed as they bounced on safe floating objects. Teenagers performed exaggerated but harmless antics, and even the adults joined in, embracing the playful yet orderly chaos. Cricket glanced at the sky, where the stabilized fragments of the core pulsed gently, casting a soft, colorful glow over the city. Balance is restored. Elmore can now exist as a hybrid world, chaotic, funny, absurd, but under rules that keep it sustainable. Fun and safety don't have to be enemies. Gumball ran up to him, arms spread wide. "So, this is the new Elmore. Safe chaos forever," Darwin added. "And we're all part of keeping it that way." Cricket smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. "Yes, together we've shown that even two wildly different worlds can coexist, with understanding, teamwork, and a little bit of guidance. Chaos and logic can live side by side." As night fell, Elmore twinkled under a sky alive with safe, controlled wonders, floating stars, gently bouncing moons, and softly glowing fragments of the hybrid core. The Greens, the Wattersons, and the citizens of Elmore celebrated quietly, knowing the town had survived its greatest challenge and emerged stronger, funnier, and more vibrant than ever. The balance was restored, and for the first time in a long while, the city thrummed with the perfect harmony of chaos and order. The adventure was over, but the legacy of safe, guided chaos and the memories of the Greens' heroics would ripple through Elmore forever.